Hi, I'm Mr. Vitito. Welcome to lecture number 4 for the Imperialism unit for the U.S. History and Government course for New York State course curriculum. Today we're going to be talking about, let's see, this lecture 4 number notes are notes on World War I. And today we're going to be looking at causes and effects of the war and maybe even a little bit about the war itself. But not a lot, but we're really kind of focused today on causes and effects. All right? What I want to do is I want to start with first a reminder that the United States has had a foreign policy since George Washington was around. And that foreign policy was first really discussed with George Washington's farewell address. This is where he said to America that we should trade, trade, trade. All right? We should make lots of money, but we should also avoid all alliances or risk the destruction from an unwanted war. And what's the chance that we would make a military alliance with somebody who made then a stupid decision to go to war and we get sucked in with it because we have this military alliance? It would be a bad idea. The Monroe Doctrine does sort of the similar thing. It says, you know, Europe, you stay out of our business, we'll stay out of yours, and it keeps things kind of clean, I think, in that way. So what is it that caused us to want to go into World War I and get involved in a European conflict that had been going on for a few years? The war itself, World War I, began in 1914 in Europe. We ourselves did not get involved until 1917. Believe me, there were reasons to maybe be involved. The sinking of the Lusitania was certainly something that nearly drew Woodrow Wilson into war. And I'll tell you, although he ran for president the first time against Teddy Roosevelt and William Howard Taft as a progressive president, his second term when he ran on the slogan, "He kept us out of war." And he did. He believed in keeping us out of that European war, and he believed the Atlantic Ocean was a barrier that would keep us separate. But I do believe that finally he came to realize that Germany was such a huge threat to democracies that maybe our being involved was going to be mandatory, was going to be necessary. You don't want to see the last great democracy fall in Europe only to have the eyes then of the conqueror to turn to us. That'd be scary, wouldn't it? That's what might have been. All right, so what I want to point out to you here then are the notes that I have for you for the causes of us going into World War I. To start with, unrestricted submarine warfare was a style of using a brand new technology known as a submarine and using it to sink ships with torpedoes, and that basically the Germans, at least early in the war, were sinking ships indiscriminately. And American naval ships, including civilian ships like the ocean liner known as the Lusitania, were sunk, and there was huge loss of American life. And Germany, because they knew they were going to actually incur the wrath of the United States, committed to actually stopping it. However, when they stopped this unrestricted submarine warfare, they found, or at least they believed, that the United States was in fact supplying Britain, and we probably were. We were selling goods to either side of the war. We didn't care who our customers were, but I think we were certainly benefiting Britain and the Allies much more than we were the United States. So who were the two sides in World War I? Well, we have what's known as the Triple Entente, or the Allies, okay? And the Triple Entente was made up of Britain, France, and Russia. This is not the Soviet Union of later years. This is Russia under a czar. Okay, so before communism. So the Triple Entente right here is known as the Allies. I guess that's its nickname. The Central Powers is made up of Germany, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which is really responsible for starting the war, and the Ottoman Empire, which today would be considered Turkey. Okay, so these are the groups that are fighting. These are the two sides that are trading off. Germany feels its need to return to the unrestricted submarine warfare, but they suspect that if the I think they know, if they go back to seeing American ships being sunk, America is going to jump into this war on the other side. And if they do, the balance of power is going to be tipped in favor of the Triple Entente, or what's going to be known as the Allies when we join. What they decided to do was actually go back to unrestricted submarine warfare, but they tried to, with the Zimmerman note, they sent a telegram off to Mexico to say, hey, listen, if you go to war right now and attack the United States, this is your second note right there, if you're willing to go ahead and do that, you keep them busy, we'll mop up Europe, and when we're finished, we'll come over to the United States. We'll come over to the Western Hemisphere, and we'll help you to defeat the United States, and what do you get out of this? you can take back that third of a country the United States took from you back in the 1840s, which today would be California, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada. I don't know, I just missed something in there. But you know, that big section at the lower southwest corner of the United States. I won't even try to name those, okay? For right now, you get the idea. Mexico is going to be a winner. What happens is this. All communications that go across that transatlantic cable between the Americas and Europe travels on a cable, one, that was laid across the Atlantic, goes to Britain first and over to Germany. So you know Britain is not going to stand around and not like try to hear what's going on. If Germany's communicating with people and they intercepted that message, decoded it, and gave it to us, the United States. When we find out what the offer is from Germany to Mexico, I don't even know if Mexico got the message. We turn right around to Mexico and don't you even think about it. And they didn't. That's good news. We jump into the war and within a year, it's over. We jump into 1917, 1918, we're celebrating the victory. Okay? So, it's going to be after the war that people are going to start wondering, you know, I mention this now just because at the end of the war, and when we're into the 1920s, there's a lot of disillusionment about why we went into this war in the first place. So I want to make note right now, notes number 3 and 4, just so we have this as trivia. The United States trade favored the Allies, and the United States had loans mostly to the Allied nations. There are going to be those that are going to make a big deal out of this fact, saying, hey, the United States went to war for reasons other than the ones they say. They went to war to protect bankers and their bank loans and that sort of thing, and protect our businesses, which wouldn't be good reasons to go to a war. Maybe they would be good reasons. I'll let you decide whether they're good reasons or not. But at least people were doubting it because we're not going to like the way the war ends, as it turns out, even though we're winners. We are winners. So let's go to part C. The United States, it tips the balance of power in favor of the Allies. Okay? And note number 1 right here is that the war to end all war, which it was called because of Wilson's peace plan with the League of Nations, would eliminate war. It was a war that we won, but it was a war that in the end we didn't get what we wanted. Coming back to that in a moment. Let's finish up these notes. All right? So under Part C we have 3 points. First of all, this war, like I said, it's known as the war to end all wars. The United States military began a draft, which is the forced selection of young men to serve in the military. And this was one of your vocab words right here, the Selective Service Act. And finally, to put down any dissent, a little bit like how Abraham Lincoln threw people into jail and violated their writ of habeas corpus, here new laws were passed known as the Espionage Act and the Sedition Act, which would jail people who are criticizing the war. Now, one person who was accused of breaking this law took his case all the way to the Supreme Court. It's known as Schenck versus the United States, and basically he's arguing that he has freedom of speech and he can say anything he wants. To my surprise, really, I guess as a U.S. history student, I would have believed that that was true, that was the right thing to have happen. And as it turns out, no. The Supreme Court believed that he created a clear and present danger, and clear and present danger is one of those things that we use when we talk about Schenck versus the United States. He created a clear and present danger simply to the fact that we might lose the war if everybody listened to him. Okay, so he ended up serving his jail. And how's this for a little bit of irony? The war ended in 1918. He was convicted of this law in 1919 and went to jail. The war was already over. History's a funny thing. All right, so coming out of this, the United States has Wilson's 14 points, which is an outline of U.S. war goals, and probably the one I want you to know the most is this one right here. The League of Nations was a proposed organization made up of, well, it would have been a confederacy, all nations having one vote, a lot like the United Nations, and each nation whom belongs signs away their right to be able to make war. The League of Nations would have control of your military in a way, and if they needed you to contribute weaponry and arms and that kind of thing, they would just simply tell you that you had to do it. And if you signed this treaty to join the League of Nations, you would have had to have done it. And the United States didn't like that idea. Even though our own president suggests it, in the end, our Congress is going to hate it and reject the idea and reject the Treaty of Versailles. So, looking at the Treaty of Versailles, what do we need to know about it? Well, first, I think we need to know that it was very punishing to Germany. There were high reparations, which was going to break the bank in Germany. And when we say high reparations, we're talking about payments that a loser makes to the victors. And it was crushing for the economy of Germany. It's really going to be part of what feeds World War I, Chapter 2, also popularly known as World War II. It's during this time of desperation after the war in Germany that you can get a madman like Hitler to be able to rise up and be popular among the German people. So reparations wasn't a very good idea, and neither was actually forcing Germany to accept guilt for having started the war that it didn't start. Yet there it was in the Treaty of Versailles, the War Guilt Clause. Note number 2 says that the United States refuses to go along with such a treaty and they negotiate their own treaty. And in fact, following World War I, the United States is actually trying to help Germany pay the reparations, even making loans and that kind of thing to try to help them out. It doesn't help. The world's heading into a Great Depression and we don't even see it coming. All right, and it really starts as a result of the economic problems in Europe. Well, that's one of the reasons anyways. Next, the United States, right here, the United States refuses to join the League of Nations, primarily because our president gave away the Senate's power to make war and to make peace. Why didn't he give away something that was his? Hey, even another thing, check this out. This is Part A right here. Whoops, I should do this. This is Part A. Congress can declare war and peace, not the president. And Part B, which is right here, okay, Wilson negotiated this treaty while excluding congressmen in his peace delegation. Wilson was a hero going over to France for this signing of the Treaty of Versailles and the negotiation of it all. And he went over, he was a hero. Everyone was hailing. They were on top of buildings, huge lit up signs that says, "Viva Wilson!" And he purposefully went solo. He was enjoying his moment of glory. I think some congressmen probably would have liked to have been in his detail. And I'd also say maybe it would have been easier for him to have sold the Treaty of Versailles to Congress if he had some congressmen on his side. But he didn't. I guess that came to haunt him later when he wanted Congress to approve it. So Wilson was trying to give away the Congress's power over war and peace, and I don't think that was particularly smart. So he went around the country actually campaigning by train when he had a stroke, and that was it. The man who refused to negotiate on the Treaty of Versailles with Congress has a stroke, and he's bedridden for the rest of his presidency. In fact, as a little extra piece of information that will do you absolutely no good anywhere else except for just talking with me, there came a time when his cabinet, no one could actually see the president. His wife, who married Mr. Wilson, President Wilson, while he was president, her name was Edith. Edith would take papers in from the cabinet to have